Is it really that simple? Maybe it is, because Bitcoin has rejected from the macro range high resistance here, and the macro range low support is all the way in 16K. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about whether or not we're beginning this macro consolidation within this wide range from 16K to 30K. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like the video if you enjoy videos like these, and let's dive right in. So we have rejected from this resistance. We had the higher high here. We had the weekly bearish divergence play out, and right now we're seeing further consolidation at the very top of this macro range. But we also have to talk about the range low support here and a potential higher low that we're seeing relative to the bear market bottom of 2022, and of course this reversal in early 2023. This higher low here is a key trend line to potentially watch out for should we retrace much lower than current prices. But one of the things I also want to talk about is this lower high resistance, which I mentioned in the tweet, which we rejected from, and propagating that into this range, it looks like this. So maybe even propagating it into the future, just like this, gives us a blue macro triangle within this macro range. And that makes things a lot more interesting, because now we know that, of course, rejecting at the range high is what has happened in the past, but potential recoveries will likely not make us see and revisit this macro range high resistance. We might actually revisit this region and reject from there, for instance, should we see a rebound from this current 26K support. But even then, we might see a rejection a little bit earlier because we have some bull market EMAs earlier on. But we talked about that in yesterday's video, so feel free to check that one out in the top right hand corner. So we are inside this macro range. We are forming a potential macro triangle, with this being a resistance and this being a support sometime in the future should this retrace really take place and accelerate. But one of the things to also mention is the ascending, or at least not an ascending triangle, but a typical triangle that we're seeing here on the RSI, with its long-standing higher-low uptrend line and its lower high downtrend line. But one of the things to also mention is how have things progressed since August 4th, and that's when I created this first video about could it be simple about this macro range, and we were talking about this triangle for the RSI, and you can see how things have since materialized quite substantially. We rejected from the top of that triangle on the RSI, and we're revisiting this higher low. And what's really interesting about things progressing since that time is that we've also dropped below the midpoint of this RSI, so the RSI 50, which changes things quite dramatically, and we're going to be talking about that in this video a little bit later on. And if you're enjoying this video, feel free to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future, and of course leave a like, as it really helps with the algorithm and helps this channel grow. But one of the things to really mention also is the double top, and you guys have been tuning into the channel over the past few weeks, and we've been talking about this double top fully completing, and it's finally completed, and it looks like it's ready for validation, but it's not been confirmed just quite yet. We need a weekly close below this level or turning it into a resistance, but at the moment 26K, the base of this double top, is holding as a support, and if it will continue to do that, we could see a recovery into the bull market EMAs, which are around the 27K region. This macro lower high could be a resistance should we even go further up, but generally speaking, we're right now at this key moment in time for the double top. Will it validate? Will this 26K support lose itself? Because if it does, we're going to see further downside. And what we have to really talk about as well in conjunction with this double top base, we are at a support at the double top, but we're not at a support just yet here on the RSI, and we know also that the seller levels aren't quite in there yet. We're not seeing seller exhaustion levels like we saw on previous price reversals, and we've spoken about that in yesterday's video, so feel free to check that one out if you didn't. But the fact that we're at this double top support, not yet at this RSI higher low just yet, and we don't see those seller exhaustion levels, maybe we need to have some sort of volatility to at least the downside, whether it's just a downside wick like we saw here. For that downside wick to occur, to bring in those seller volumes that will get us a bit closer to seller exhaustion, for the RSI to drop into this higher low, because it's not quite there yet, even though price is at this support. So maybe we need some sort of flush to see those metrics get hit. So yes, maybe there needs to be a flush in that respect for these metrics to reset. But what if this higher low won't hold? What if that doesn't hold and we see a validation and a drop below this 26k support to validate this overall double top formation, to give us a measured move of around back to 22k or so? What if this higher low doesn't hold? Because we've seen price hold, or at least the RSI to hold the bottom of this RSI 50 region, so below 50 is where we've seen price hold this higher low for a long time before breaking into the upper 50 region, so above the RSI 50. And what's fantastic about this region right now being lost is the fact that we've seen a 200-day, 210-day period below the RSI 50 holding this higher low for 210 days, and then for 217 days we were holding this over RSI 50 region, so pretty much mirroring this period. That mirroring is fantastic to see right over here. So sub RSI 50 for 210 days and now over RSI 50 for 217 days, roughly symmetrical. Now we've broken below this RSI 50, which means that we could be entering a period of another 210 days of being sub RSI 50, and for that to happen we'd have to lose this higher low. And if we do lose that higher low and we do sentence ourselves to this 210-day period under the RSI 50, then we could actually see the RSI consolidate in RSI sub 50 levels going into March 2024. Going in closer to the Bitcoin halving in 2024. And if we actually extrapolate this a bit more into 217 days like we saw here, that would get us even closer to the RSI, to the Bitcoin halving event. So that's an interesting symmetry about what we're seeing in the RSI. Really interesting stuff, that we could be seeing a period of sub RSI 50 regions for the coming 200 days or so, only if we lose this higher low as a support. And what that would mean and translate into price is we'd probably see a breakdown from this double top, and we'd see further consolidation within this general macro range, because we are in this macro range and we've rejected from the range high resistance. And if we see this double top validate and break down, then we'll see probably downside continuation into the middle of this range, right over here, roughly speaking. And losing that region, we'd probably see a revisit back into the lower regions of this macro range, with this higher low being one of the key levels to watch out for. And of course, this range low support, it's very difficult to think of this being revisited in the future, because 15,500 being a key bear market bottom, I do feel like the bear market bottom is in already. So revisiting this for a double bottom relative to the bear market bottom, that doesn't really happen across cycles. And of course you could argue that this is a different cycle, but I feel like it's a low probability event, and instead we could see, if things really do get worse, we could see a revisit of this higher low. And if things are really volatile, we could see some sort of downside wicking, as we saw in March 2020, for instance, downside wicking like that, or some sort of downside wicking like this on a price reversal, which could get us closer, but not quite, to that 16k region. So we know that Bitcoin is consolidating within a macro range, and we're going to see further consolidation into lower parts of the range if this double top formation gives way and validates. But even if we see a rebound from here and then rejection maybe here, maybe at the bull market EMAs, and then lose 26k, then that's just buying Bitcoin a bit more time at these levels before finally seeing sub 26k levels. So whether that drop down occurs soon or whether it takes a little bit more time before it occurs, there is a chance of seeing further downside, especially if this resistance holds as a strong one and rejects price as it has been over the past few weeks. So we know about this double top. Lose this double top, we'll drop into lower levels in this macro range. But we really need to pay attention to the perspective of this macro range acting as a general accumulation of sorts for the next halving rally going into 2024 and 2025, and you'll learn more about that in the video in the top right hand corner. So feel free to check out my Bitcoin cheat sheet for 2024 and beyond, and I'll speak to you in the next one.